Great evening, wonderful beings of love and light and truth. More importantly, love and gratitude, and the understanding that we believe a whole lot, but we know very little. And I'm so glad to be a part of a community who recognizes that we believe a whole lot, but we really know very little. And we're in the process of allowing the knowing to unfold in our life. And that's part of the reason we're here. I believe we're here on this planet in many ways to learn. We're being taught with every single moment, with every single experience that we go through. We're being taught, and often truths are also caught, not just taught. This evening, I want to get into something that I'm experiencing personally, and a lot of what you'll hear me talk about with you and from the platform here at First Unity Spiritual Campus, a lot of what you'll hear me talk about are things I'm experiencing. These are experiences that I'm personally going through. And so I share with you my journey, really. That's really all I am. That's why I've said before, I don't consider myself a teacher, maybe not even necessarily a spiritual leader. Although I intend to do my best to walk a straight line, in that I intend to live at a high level of morality and a high level of ethics and integrity. It is my desire to live that kind of a life. But I don't consider myself, like I say, to necessarily be a teacher, but a pointer, and sort of just a sojourner with you. I feel like I'm your brother, and that you're my brothers and sisters, and that we get to walk along together on this journey and allow these things to unfold. And these are really suggestions that I want to share with you about things that are happened in my life and sort of how I'm working through them. Already here we are, only about a week and a half and into this new year, and wow, at all of the stuff that's already going on. And I mentioned to you, I think last week, I'm talking about some of the forecasting, that there's a lot that's going to be happening in continued deconstruction and continued destruction lust, and also going to see some really wonderful breakthroughs. But in the midst of the chaos, what's important, and what's most important, and to me paramount for me personally, and I suggest it for you as well, is to not get caught up in the chaos, is to recognize the goodness that's in the world. Hopefully you're already doing that in your life. I want to remind us that was really the final thing that was a part of the forecasting that I shared with you this last Sunday, and that was that we would make sure that we highlight the good instead of getting into the chaos and start highlighting the negatives. Notice them, see them, be aware of what's happening in the world, but don't be uninformed or over-informed. And what I mean is, don't be so locked into the current formula that you're not able to reformulate and help to transform the experience of life here on this planet. We have the power to do it. The question is, will we utilize our will to make that happen? So this evening, I want to go back to a Taoist approach to dealing with current issues in the world, and I want to talk about a few things that sometimes unless we practice these things as a discipline, we don't do them, because in the Western world, at least, we're really kind of taught the opposite of this. So I wanted to look at non-resistance and gentleness, and I wanted to look at flow. Non-resistance, gentleness, and flow. And how can we be in a constant state of gentleness, suppleness, flexibility, non-resistance, and always be in a flow? Can we always be there? I'm not sure that we always can be, but I think we can be if we practice it. And could we reach 80%? If we can't reach 100%, are we willing to go that extra mile and reach that, at least go ahead and try to reach for that 80% of the time? To be 80% water and 20% solid. I don't expect what we think is perfection is 100%. I think if we operate the way our bodies are built, which is 80% water and 20% muscled water, pretty close to it at least, that we will begin to operate with a lot more flexibility. Now, before we get into that, I want us to take a few moments to center. All of you have joined with the meditation, or most of you have joined with the meditation so far this week. And so hopefully we are in some centering already and in some flexibility. But I'd like to invite us into a little more space of centering today, this evening, before we get into this evening's chat. So I'm going to ask you, if you would, to consider receiving a deep breath in and exhale with some sound. Some people think that's crazy, but it really is activating the vagus nerve, and it's activating places in your body that aren't typically activated without sound. And once again, breathe in. And exhale. And as we move into this space tonight, we say, Spirit, lead us where our trust is without borders. Let us walk on the water wherever you'd call us. Take us deeper than our feet could ever wander. And our faith is made stronger in your presence. Spirit of truth, take from us what we don't need. Bring to us everything we do need. Our entire being is surrendered. And we say thank you, thank you, thank you. Open our eyes. Open the doors before us. Help us to know in our life whether it's an exit or an entrance. And it could be both. It's exiting one thing and entering to another. And it is really an imagery of paradox. And we get to live that. Exiting one place and entering into another. And may we enter and exit with love in our hearts, with a loving awareness. I thank you for the peace that passes all understanding as it guards our heart and keeps us out of chaos, keeps us elevated, keeps us on the way up, expanding our consciousness, keeps us in a beginner's mind, keeps us free from fear and anxiety. So intelligent Holy Spirit, guide, direct us, teach us, and show us what you'd have us to know. In the name and the nature of the indwelling pure presence. And so it is. And so it is. Okay, I want to look at non-resistance this evening. And I don't know what's been going on in your life, but already what's been going on in my life is that I set some things in order at the first of the year that I decided I was not going to enter back into, particular energies that were not my area of expertise, not my area of calling, and really not something that I needed to be involved with or to busy myself with, because it's just not my area of expertise. And I found myself drawn right back into it, and I entered a space last night, kind of had a restless night, and I can think of 2 times really in the last about 4 years that I have had that kind of struggle to sleep. And I thought, okay, this is calling out to me to make some corrections for myself. So this evening, again, is literally me getting back engaged with things for myself personally. And I thought, maybe I'd share it with you and see what's been happening in your world. We all go through shifts and changes. Change is the most consistent thing that happens in our human experience and expression. But it's when we're resistant to change that change can become an issue. And in the Lao Tzu, the writings of the Tao Te Ching, one of the verses that stands out to me is when Lao Tzu says, knowing others is intelligence, knowing yourself is true wisdom, mastering others is strength, mastering yourself is true wisdom. And that's the basis that I would like to work on this evening. That's the basis I'd like to work with. Knowing others is intelligence. Knowing yourself is true wisdom. Mastering others, that may be strength. But mastering yourself, that's true power. And let me remind us what I'm saying when I say master. When I'm talking about mastering, I'm not talking about making yourself a slave. I'm talking about being able to be your authentic self without thinking about it. That's really what mastering means. To master bike riding is to be able to do it without really thinking about it. You can do multiple things because that's the thing that's set to muscle memory. For guitarists, for us, for me as a singer and a guitar player, It's important for me to set a song to muscle memory so that I can master the chord progression of that song so that I can concentrate on my singing and be able to play without thinking about it. That's why we do meditation. That's why we do affirmations and confirmations. That's why we have life visioning. That's why we go through this constant reminder of these principles so that we can come to the place where we master ourself. That is true power, to be able to be our authentic self. Remember who's the one in charge, and it's not your thoughts, your feelings, or emotions. It's the spiritual self, it's your divine self that's in charge, and to be able to locate that without thinking about it and start to work with that. And it's become more and more easy for me. I don't do it 100% of the time. I would not lie to you about that. But it's become much easier for me to, in every situation, deep breath, return to the true self, and then ask in that situation what is real. Not what am I experiencing in my feelings or my emotions or my thoughts right now, but what is real in this. And with this particular situation that arose, it was a perfect opportunity for me to go back to that question, what is real? Jesus says something very interesting. And for most of us, we struggle with this, especially when we're talking about the Middle East, or we're talking about politics, or we're talking about the violence toward our gay and lesbian transgender friends. We're talking about racism. We're talking about sexism, whatever it may be. Women's rights being taken, and the war that's in the midst of all of that, and all of those things. When we hear these words, for us, sometimes it can be a little puzzling, and I want us to just sit with these words. Instead of trying to decipher every single word, sit with it and see where it lands in you. Jesus said this, resist not evil. And this is what he tells his disciples, and anybody who is a disciple, it means they've adopted the discipline of whoever is leading them. Jesus is leading his disciples. They've chosen the discipline of Jesus according to what they at least told him. And little side note, a lot of times people will say they're your disciples until you say something they don't like. And then they're off the boat, which happened with Jesus too. And I figure if it can happen with Jesus, it can happen with anybody who's walking the pathway and sharing truths. But as soon as you say something that doesn't jive with what they believe, a lot of times people won't even give it a shot. And this particular verse is like that. It gets skipped over by many, where Jesus said, resist not evil. This kind of goes along with what happens in the garden when St. Peter pulls his sword and attempts to cut the head off of the servant of the soldiers who were coming to arrest Jesus. He misses his head and cuts his ear off. And Jesus says, sheath your sword, because if you live by it, you'll die by the sword. I mean, Jesus is saying to them, drop your swords. In the book of Revelation, it says, let every sword be pounded into plowshares, because violence is never the answer to any question. This is why when people ask me about the ceasefire in the Middle East, I say, of course I'm ceasefire, because there should have never been a bullet fired. There should never be a bomb going off. Hamas shouldn't have done what they did. Israelis shouldn't be doing what they're doing. When you're killing people, you're doing it. You are working against nature, and you're certainly working against the nature of God, and you're working against the nature of Jesus, Lao Tzu, Buddha, Muhammad, and the list goes on and on and on. But Jesus says, resist not evil. And what does that mean? I don't know. Sit with it. Instead of being in resistance to it, maybe it's emotional or spiritual aikido. I've tried to show this to you before, and it's a small space on the camera. I'll back up a little bit. But to practice Aikido, the art of Aikido, there's a lot of this and a lot of that. It's moving the energy. Instead of abruptness, instead of blocking and firing, it's moving the energy. Resist not is basically that movement in your emotions. To resist not evil is to just let it flow by. Now, in Stephen Mitchell's translation of this verse of the Tao Te Ching, it says, the gentlest thing in the world overcomes the hardest thing in the world. That which has no substance enters where there is no space. This shows the value of non-action and non-resistance. Teaching without words, performing without action, that is the master's way. Okay, once again, coming back to non-doing and non-resistance, non-action. This doesn't, a lot of people think it means you're being lazy. No, he's really saying a lot of what Sadhguru says. When Sadhguru says, when anything abrupt or anything crazy in your life happens, like getting fired from a job, or your spouse says they want a divorce, or your kids have gotten incarcerated, or you found cocaine in their room, or something's happened. You have a child who's pregnant before marriage, or they're still in high school, and you have these life moments take place. What Sadhguru says is sit with that for 24 hours. Do not act. Wait 24 hours. And they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength, and I would say, shall regain their clarity. Sit with it for 24 hours and before you make any kind of actions. And so teaching without words and performing without action. Now here's another translation. That which offers no resistance overcomes hardest substances. That which offers no resistance can enter where there is no space, seemingly. Few in the world can comprehend the teachings without words or understand the value of non-action and non-resistance. How can I become more flexible? How can I stop making knee-jerk reactions? How can I be more at peace? How can I hold my peace and allow my whole life to be led by this principle of flow? I want to let the Holy Spirit flow through me. I want to let the pure presence flow through me. I want the wisdom of God to answer my questions instead of me constantly jumping to conclusions. When you jump to conclusions, the odds are you're going to operate outside of inclusion, which means you're going to be operating within exclusion, and exclusion is always a narrow look. Think about that. See, there's another essential teaching in the teachings of the Tao, and really I would dare say the teachings of all spiritual traditions, and that is the power of gentleness. Because with the power of gentleness, the power of non-resistance, the power of non-action, instead of being so active, the power of those things, in that power, you begin to possess the ability to move into spaces where there seemed to be no room before. See, by forcing and striving, we might get a job done or a project done, but at the same time, we're going to spend more energy than necessary and possibly suffer from the collateral damage of that hard work. On the other hand, someone in a state of flow starts to approach a task intelligently. And they even start to know when to act. They know how to find balance between action and non-action. We know how to find the golden path, honestly, the beautiful path that's somewhere between anxiety and boredom. And even if we get bored, we ask ourselves how it feels to be bored instead of trying to find something to do. See, what I don't really want to do is give you food for thought. I want to give you food for your soul, because you don't need to feed your thoughts. If you feed them, they're going to be extremely healthy. But I want to feed your soul so that you can transcend your thoughts. Thoughts and emotions and feelings will get you in trouble more times than not. When you have the ability to just sit, the intelligent Holy Spirit starts to take over. Then you know how and what to act on, and you find balance between action and non-action. You start to find that there's no resistance in you. You start to feel the tension. It's asking for your attention so that you can remind yourself of your real intention, and that is to live a life in the flow, live a life in peace, live a life in compassion and love and in kindness and in respect. See, Taoism really compares life with a river. So the river itself already has courses, several courses. It already finds its way to be. And the thing is the Tao is compared to a river because the river already has ways to work these things out. It already has courses of action. It already has places that it's flowing. And it decides how it wants to chisel that out. And so once we find ourselves in that river of pure presence, once we find that ourselves in the river and the flow of the Holy Spirit, we can swim against the current if we choose to. We can grab a hold of a branch along the way, or we can let go and go along with the flow of that pure presence. Emmanuel Erna here at First Unity Spiritual Campus said this Sunday, row, row, row your boat gently down consciousness stream. Why don't we do that? And maybe even take the row out. Go, go, go. Go your boat gently down the stream. The stream is there's already a current. It's already working, and it wants to work with you. Now, we can swim against the current, and most of us have done that before, and we don't even realize it. Our mind believes that we are supposed to control our environment. We've been taught that we're supposed to control our environment so that we can survive. And that's kind of egocentric if you want to know the truth about it. Now, the vast majority of people are doing that, though. We're in the process of trying to control the things outside of us, and that is not our job. It's not our duty. It's not our calling. Can I get a witness, somebody? So our calling is not to control. It's not to resist. It's to really start to work with this feeling of non-resistance and what it is to be in the flow. There's a belief that we are to navigate the river, not try to control the river. What I'm learning to do here on this planet is to navigate life, not control life. But if I spend my entire lifetime here, time's an illusion, but if I spend my entire amount of time here trying to control the river, not only will it not ever happen, I will also waste all of my energy. And here's what begins to happen. We get to the end of our life and we haven't even lived. We've existed. We've fought. We've suffered. See, the beginning of suffering is that striving with. The beginning of suffering is going against, is pushing, is resisting. It's not allowing ourselves to be in the flow. Can we really live in 2024 an attitude of faith? Can we really live in an attitude of faith? And in that attitude of faith, actually allow the Spirit, as we've said in charismatic church, in evangelical churches, in Pentecostal churches, are we able to really surrender and let the Holy Spirit lead? The Holy Spirit is not out there somewhere. The Holy Spirit is within you, attempting to give you opportunities to be guided and directed so that you can live a life with less suffering. It was interesting. I was reading, I love this Discover the Power Within You, Eric Butterworth. And I was reading this a little earlier today, and I like what he was talking about. He was talking about marriage, and he was talking about consciousness, and he was talking about living essentially in a state of non-resistance. And he said this about marriages, and so this is about relationships to me. He said, how much better it would be to replace the quote-unquote vow of marriage with a sincere consecration to behold the divinity in each other as a possibility to work together to give releasement to the imprisoned splendor which love has perceived. He said, what about an annual or even daily reconsecration to the spirit of marriage? He said, that's by far preferable to a once and for all vow to stay together, come what may. Think about that. What if we just consecrate, noticing the divinity in every situation, a sincere consecration, instead of these vows about till death do we part, and most of us don't even think about what we're saying when we take those vows. He said T.S. Eliot characterizes the plight of so many marriages and relationships with a devastating simplicity in this line from his Cocktail Party, and this is what T.S. Eliot says. They do not repine, are contented with the morning that separates, and with the evening that brings together, for casual talks before the fire. Two people who know they do not understand each other, breeding children whom they do not understand, and who will never understand them. I want you to think about what's being read here. Two people who know they do not understand each other, breeding children whom they do not understand, and who will never understand them. Can I find a way to move away from criticism, from control, from power struggles, from trying to make things turn out the way I think they should, and instead return to a consecration of my recognizing the divinity that's at work around me all of the time and the splendor of non-resistance, the splendor of non-action, the splendor of going with the flow, the splendor of navigating this river of life, but not ever trying to control it. Am I able to do that? And I can tell you this, blessed are the flexible, for they are not easily broken. And Jesus said, resist not evil. So tonight I just wanted to leave you with this. I wanted to share this with you as you go throughout the rest of this week and moving into 2024. Can we at least try to work with some of these principles? Non-resistance. Can we try to work with gentleness, non-action? Are we able to be in the flow? Are we truly willing to be people of faith? People of faith who will say, Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. Let me walk on the water. There it is. Wherever you would call me. Guide me. River of life. Jesus said out of your belly would flow rivers of living water. Are you able to go with that flow? And allow that flow to flow to you, through you, and as you, and you be a part of it? And yes, navigate the river, but not try to control it. You know what happens when you go with the flow of the river? You have the power of the river with you. When you go in resistance to it, you'll never win, and it will wear you out. I love you, folks. And I say thank you for being a part of this community. We're getting ready to get up out of here, and I want to say that I love you, and I'm honored to be on this journey with you. As you go throughout the rest of this week, consider non-resistance and non-action, gentleness instead, humility. Remember, the true power is mastering yourself, not anyone else. And surrender to the flow. Don't resist evil. Notice it. If you need to see it, see it. See what's in the world. See and understand that there's evil in the world. There just is. But choose to not get into the vortex of it. Allow there to be a ceasefire within your own soul. If you want to put you want to cease fire in the Middle East, cease fire within your own self and send that energy there. Right in the midst of all of this turmoil. Peace, be still. And be still and know I am God. I love you all very much. I hear the music getting started. The ways to give will be on the screen on the way out. I encourage you this year to commit to giving where you're fed. And if you're fed here, consider giving consistently. Yeah, that. I love you. Peace.